Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Make for All Commitment Development session. This is the second of the two sessions that we're hosting. The last session we had was really focused on providing an overview of the Make for All initiative. And this one is really designed to take a deeper dive into what a commitment really is and how it can be useful to your organization. So the first half of this session, we're really going to be focused on kind of walking through the commitment development process. And then the second half of this 1 hour session, what I really want to do is just open it up to the folks that have joined the webinar to brainstorm a little bit more openly and collectively around some ideas that you might have and questions that you might have around developing a commitment for your organization. My name is Stephanie Santoso. I'm the Director of Maker Initiatives for US 2020 at Citizen Schools. US 2020 is an initiative of Citizen Schools. Really, I wanted to thank you all for joining. This webinar is going to be made available on our website, makeforall.org. The previous webinar that provides a more detailed overview of the initiative overall is actually currently available on the Make for All site. So you're welcome to check that out if you haven't already. So let's get started. For those of you who joined the last webinar, the first few slides may feel a little repetitious just because I just want to acknowledge there's probably folks that have joined this webinar that haven't joined the last one, and so I just want to provide that additional context. But then we'll take a deeper dive into the commitment development process. Just to advance the slide, there you go. Just to provide an overview. The goal of Make for All is really around ensuring that children of all backgrounds have the opportunity to have access to the tools, mentors, and spaces to become the next generation of problem solvers, inventors, engineers, designers, and entrepreneurs. And really,
hey, Steph.
Yep.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. This is Megan, everybody. I'm Steph's colleague. I just wanted to let you know that we're actually not seeing your screen right now. So.
Oh, you're not? Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
Thanks, Megan. Let me try to share that. Oops. Sharing. Aha. Is that better?
Yep, now it's there. Got it. Perfect.
Okay, sorry. My computer was, I think, a little stuck, but great. Thanks for flagging that. And for those of you that are on, Megan is my colleague. She's going to be helping support this webinar. So right now, you all are muted, but if you have particular questions, there is the chat box. If you're joining the webinar online, please feel free to use the chat box to share particular questions, and then during the second half, we'll actually have an opportunity for folks to share out. There is a hand-raising tool that you can use to unmute yourself. So just to sort of realign, so really the goal of Make for All is really making sure that we know that maker education is important, but we also know that there are lots of students across the country that don't yet have the resources and the support that they need to have these experiences. Oops. Okay, so why do we need Make for All? We know that research has shown that maker-centered learning is really critical to developing the mindset, skills, and experiences that are really essential for helping students prepare themselves for, the jobs of the future. And in some cases, we don't even necessarily know what those jobs are going to look like. But the social emotional learning that comes with maker-centered learning, the critical problem solving. These are all really important to ensuring that students have the flexibility and the skill set that they need to become innovative problem solvers and become creative entrepreneurs. So, what we realized also is that this really requires an all hands on deck effort. We should continue to do national field building with regards to maker-centered learning in ways that are creating new partnerships and new collaborations. And really, Make for All is also around thinking about how we can work together to support maker-centered learning in a way that is really achieving collective impact. So a big part of this is around really taking stock of the great work that's already been done by organizations in this space, and then doing some mapping to better understand where, with regards to maker-centered learning, do we have some really great models and best practices? Where are there gaps? Where are there resources and where are there needs, and doing some matchmaking around that. So the opportunity here is that Make for All as an initiative, we launched a commitment, a national call for commitments in December of last year. The idea is really to think about ways that we can continue to expand access to maker-centered learning and bring a strong focus on equity that reaches all students. And for a number of you that are on the webinar today, I know this is already a focus. And so this is probably a given, something that really aligns nicely with the work that you're already doing. So the question that I get a lot is, what is a commitment and why is it important and how is it useful? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that now. Really, what it boils down to is commitments are ways to set new goals and new milestones for the work that you're doing that can help to bring in new strategic partnerships, additional support, and really allow you to accelerate the work that you're doing in your community. So, commitments are new, they're specific, and they're measurable actions that an organization, or, it could be multiple organizations, are actually going to take together in support of a particular goal. And in this case, the focus is around maker-centered learning. What we are really excited about doing is, in the process, we're right in the process now of talking to a wide variety of different organizations who are excited about making commitments, and that includes, agents, federal and local agencies, local government, maker spaces. So those could be community-based maker spaces, K through 12 schools, higher education institutions. That includes minority serving institutions like the HBCUs, four-year research universities, community colleges, and also includes lots of wonderful nonprofit organizations that are serving communities, during the school day and after school. And so what we plan to do is to actually announce the first cohort and round of partnerships and commitments in June of this year at NAMCon, which is the National Maker Community Conference that's hosted by Nation of Makers. And that's going to be taking place in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And the idea is really that this will be the first of a number of opportunities where we will, celebrate the new commitments and new actions that organizations are taking in their communities. But it's really also an opportunity to bring together commitment makers, those commitment makers that are able to make it physically in Chattanooga, to actually roll up our sleeves and, come up with ways to take those steps to meet those commitments. So, why make a commitment? Commitments one that can engage your organization in developing new initiatives or establishing new partners. So I talked a little bit about that earlier in the webinar. Two is really they can help spread the word about a program, a model, or an activity that you've developed that would be valuable for other organizations or communities. So if you have, an initiative that has been really successful in the work that you're doing locally or regionally, and you think or you know that it could be really helpful to another community or multiple communities, this is part of the exercise of doing this call for commitments, is actually to unearth those really promising models, because there's no reason why communities should have to reinvent the wheel if there's something, especially that's been demonstrated as effective and it could potentially be adapted for another community. And that's something that we are really interested in helping to get the word out about. And then the third, commitments can facilitate broader impact locally, regionally, and nationally by allowing us to collectively match organizations that maybe haven't been working together because they didn't know about each other or didn't realize that they had such overlapping goals, but could be working together. And along those same lines, part of this exercise of the call for commitments is around helping to identify kind of where there are critical needs and where there are resources that could help to meet those needs. So commitments are also, when you're coming up with a commitment idea, at this stage we, don't necessarily expect that you're going to have all of the resources that you need to make the commitment and the goal that you're setting come true. And what we, as collectively as the Make for All initiative, hope to do is to actually help you as an organization identify the kinds of partners that you might be looking to work with to help make that commitment a reality. So I talked a little bit about this just now. Once the idea is that once we announce the first cohort of commitments in June, the work doesn't stop there. I think in actuality, that's when it just gets started, and we're really kicking things off. So, post June, what we want to do is really to, create a community where commitment makers are going to be able to help each other facilitate progress on their commitments. The idea is to also create a community where you can share best practices and tackle challenges around maker-centered learning. And I talked a little bit more about this on our last webinar, but a lot of the organizations that are involved in the Make for All initiative, including through our advisory council, are organizations that care deeply about maker-centered learning and have been working in this space for a long time and a number of years. So, on our advisory council, we have Maker Ed, Digital Promise, Reimagine America's Schools, Genentech is supporting the initiative, as well as the Arconic Foundation and Schmidt Futures. And of course, we're hosting the announcement of the commitments at NomCon, which is hosted by Nation of Makers, and they're also a member of the advisory council. So we really have taken a kind of a thoughtful approach to building up a foundation of organizations that are committed to supporting commitment makers moving forward. And then, the fourth way that we are excited to support commitment makers moving forward is really also to provide visibility and broaden awareness about commitment makers' work regionally and nationally. What we also want to do is to shine a light on work that maybe hasn't previously been showcased, but that is really having an impact on the community in which they're serving. So I want to shift a little bit to highlighting ideas around what topics your commitments could focus on. So, as I've been working with organizations that are really eager to make commitments. We've been brainstorming together on one-on-one calls and meetings. I'm excited that I would say probably to date, have anywhere from 40 to 50 commitments in development across a broad range of topics. And here's a subset that I've pulled. And these are probably for those of you that work in maker education and maker-centered learning. This comes as no surprise, but these are also areas that I think have been flagged as needs. And so it's great to see that there are commitments being developed across these topics. So, one is around increasing access to youth-oriented makerspaces. So whether that's in school, embedded within a K-12 school, or out of school, so within other institutions, public institutions, or organizations like museums and science centers or public libraries, and then in the broader community, community-based makerspaces, really thinking about the ways that they serve students locally. The second is around giving students the opportunity to solve real local and global challenges, and really engaging students in the role that they can play civically now, as opposed to having them wait until they graduate with some degree. The third is really growing the research agenda around maker-centered learning. There's already been some amazing research that has been published, and ongoing research that looks at the impact of maker-centered learning around student agency or engagement and retention in STEM fields, and that body of research continues to grow. Fourth, engaging more STEM professionals, retirees, and others in serving as maker mentors, really thinking about the critical role that mentors play in a student's life as they are really trying to envision the careers that they might have when they get older and what they could be. And then fifth is leveraging the maker movement to prepare students for jobs of the future, and really tying back that effort to a community's specific workforce development needs. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the criteria for Make for All commitment. And I would start by saying that as you're thinking about your commitment idea, what essentially we hope to see is that your commitment is something that ultimately is going to have a real impact on the work that you're doing and the community that you're serving and you're working with. And so we are less concerned about the size of the commitment, whether that's in dollars or and I would say that commitments don't have to necessarily involve money. They could, and that could be very helpful, but commitments could be they take different shapes, and I'll talk a little bit about that a little later. But I would say that it's less about the size of the commitment. Of course, it's great when you can reach more students, or support more educators, or engage more volunteers. But we're less concerned about the size or the number of students or volunteers or educators, and more concerned around what is the right size commitment specific to your community and your capacity and bandwidth as an organization. That being said, we certainly encourage you to think ambitiously about what you'd like to achieve, and that's where I think partnerships, thinking strategically about partnerships and how they can help you expand the capacity of what you're doing can be really helpful, because even if you're a smaller organization or you're in a smaller community, working with other organizations can really help you allow for your impact to radiate outwards. And so, when we thought about criteria around the Make for All initiative, these were the things that in talking with the advisory council, we thought made a lot of sense in terms of kind of broadening access to maker-centered learning and really ensuring that we're able to serve more students. So the first criteria, and the idea is that commitments would seek to address one or more of the following elements. So of course, we would love to see commitments that that are addressing all three elements, but also realize that that might not necessarily be ideal for your organization, but really striving for these three criteria is what we're hoping for. One is really thinking about equity and inclusion. So thinking about and ensuring that your commitment is, really trying to be as inclusive as possible, in that it is going to help to bring maker-centered learning to underserved and underrepresented students and families, and in ways that are very thoughtful and relevant. And the second is around ecosystem building. So recognizing that within your community alone, there are probably a variety of other organizations that have shared goals and would be interested in working together to more closely build an ecosystem that supports maker-centered learning. So that, we would be looking for commitments that are really attempting to collaborate in order to build out that ecosystem locally and regionally. And then the third is scaling what works. So if you have an initiative or program that is been working really well, and figuring out what are the ways that you want to expand that program, and that could be locally, but it also could be by working with other communities or other regions. And that speaks to also this idea that commitments, when I mentioned that they should be new, they don't have to be brand new, in that you have to come up with a completely new program or partnership. A commitment could be an expansion of something that you're already doing that has been working really well, but you want to be able to grow the work that you're doing through that initiative. So let's talk a little bit about the anatomy of a commitment. So, I mentioned that commitments are new, specific, and measurable actions. I just wanted to break down what we mean by new, what we mean by specific, and what we mean by measurable. So I already spoke to the new part. So new can mean brand new, if that is something that you feel your organization and your community really needs, but it can also be an expansion of a current program. Specific is really being clear about what your organization's next steps will be in order to achieve the goal, and tying it something back to something really tangible. So part of the reason why a commitment needs to be really specific is so that, when you share your commitment with the rest of the world, part of that goal is to actually make it possible for someone, it could be, an organization that could be a partner or it could be a funder. Someone who is reading that commitment needs to be able to read it and understand how they might be able to support the work that you're doing or collaborate with you. And so it needs to be really, really specific. And then measurable is really about thinking about how you're going to identify the impact that your commitment will have. Because there's no point in developing a commitment if you aren't working towards having an impact in some capacity. I'm sure everybody would agree with that. So the idea is really identifying metrics that you can build into your commitment that will help you gauge the progress that you're making along the way, and will really also help others to recognize how your commitment is affecting your community. I talked about this already, just new versus expanded commitments, but I just also feel like it's really important to iterate, because we really want organizations to develop something that is going to be helpful to the work that they're doing. So it's just something to consider, new versus expanded work. As you're brainstorming with your colleagues and community members. So these are sort of the 5 critical questions that I would say are great to start with as you're thinking about developing a commitment. 1 is, what are the challenges that your commitment will address? 2 is, how will your commitment address these challenges? 3 are, what are the organizations or stakeholders in your community that your organization needs to work with in order for your commitment to be accomplished? And in some cases, I would say that this time is an opportunity to challenge yourself around that question. So it might be that you have a great commitment idea and you've identified some organizations that you think would be really great partners, but you don't necessarily know who else would be helpful to work with. And so part of this process is that, and the reason why we're hosting these webinars and calls is to actually provide the opportunity for us to brainstorm collectively with you and with others in the community, so that if you know of the kind of organization or the kind of expertise you need, but you don't exactly know the specific organization that could help fill that gap, that we collectively are able to hopefully help connect you to that particular organization or organizations. The 4th is, what would be the impact of this commitment and how would you measure this? So that's getting back to that question around impact and metrics. And then the 5th is, what is the timeline within which you envision your commitment to be accomplished? So this is important just because in scoping your commitment, while you want to be ambitious, because it is an opportunity to accelerate the work that you're doing with others, you also want to be realistic. And so a timeline also helps you to be realistic and also allows you to track your progress, in a set amount of time. So this is just an example of kind of the way you can think of a commitment being structured. So as you're formulating your commitment, this is this is kind of a template or a little bit of a formula of how you could envision your commitment reading. So organization A, in collaboration with organization B and C, will be doing X in order to accomplish Y. So, sounds very mathematical, but, and it goes on to say this new expanded initiative will impact D community. So who is this impacting? By doing F. F is like the specific actionable items that you will take over the course of G timeline. So, I know that sounds very kind of, maybe sounds a little confusing, but the idea is that for the 5 questions that I had just referenced, essentially your commitment should address those 5 questions and kind of eloquently articulate them within the course of the commitment. So I have a working example from Oakland Fab City, which they actually contributed a commitment idea through the open commitment brainstorming document that we have set up. And I will, for those of you who don't already have access to that or a link to that, this is the spreadsheet. And what I will do is actually, I will show you the spreadsheet now. I can X out of here. Okay, I can't X out of here at the moment, but I will do that perhaps after we're finished with this presentation. But based off of feedback from the last webinar, the Make for All team set up an open Google spreadsheet for organizations to actually input their commitment ideas. And one of the organizations that did that was Oakland Fab City. And so they actually had a really unique idea. And for those of you who may have been following the news, I also thought it was relevant, particularly given kind of the challenges that the Oakland School District and Oakland teachers are facing right now with the teachers being on strike. But this commitment idea that Oakland Fab City has is one that, is also speaking to some of the very specific local challenges that they're facing in Oakland around education. And so the organization that submitted this is actually working with the Peralta Community College District and Oakland Unified School District. And they have been actively talking about the ways in which they want to work together to actually create more Fab Labs in the middle and high schools through OUSD, through the school district. So this is an example of what a commitment could be for that idea. And this is in no way finalized, but this is kind of what it could sound like. So, Oakland Fab City, Peralta Community College District, and Oakland Unified School District are partnering to bring more Fab Labs to middle and high schools as part of Oakland's participation in the Fab City initiative. By 2021, Laney College, which is a part of the Peralta Community College District, will help to create X number of new Fab Labs, enabling X number of students to be community problem solvers, entrepreneurs, and be ready for the jobs of the future. So that's just designed to give you a little bit of an example of how a commitment could be worded, but you can kind of see how there are elements there that reference a timeline, that has specific metrics in the form of, you would fill in the number of Fab Labs, number of students affected. It acknowledges, which organizations are leading the commitment. In this case, it would, potentially be this partnership across 3 different organizations and institutions. And it also articulates, why this commitment is important. It's important because it's actually going to help support students to, be active community problem solvers. It's going to prepare them for, jobs of the future and facilitate, their goals to be entrepreneurs. Okay. So, oops. Sorry, my computer seems to have some sticky keys. So I just want to round out before we kind of open it up for a conversation. And I'd love to, what I'd love to do is hear your ideas for commitments and some questions that you might be thinking of. So sort of just key dates to keep in mind. The deadline for submitting your commitment online is going to be May 15th. June 14th through 16th is when the new commitments will be announced and commitment makers will come together at NomCon in Chattanooga. And after June is when we will continue to focus on supporting and engaging with commitment makers to help them achieve their goals, and hopefully, not just achieve your goals, but create opportunities for you to expand upon the commitments that you make moving forward. So for next steps, I would really encourage you all, if you are interested in more publicly sharing kind of a working idea around your commitment, for broader feedback, and so that other commitment makers and organizations could provide you with ideas, is to contribute your ideas to this open Make for All Commitments brainstorm document. After this webinar, we'll post the deck and the link to that brainstorm document on the Make for All site, so that it's publicly accessible, and it is publicly accessible now as well. And then the next few weeks we'll actually have commitment development office hours. So, this is an opportunity. You can, of course, connect with me one-on-one. But if you want to drop in, we'll have office hours on March 13th and March 27th. And I'll send around information about that. So for folks who are interested in getting registered, but that's really an opportunity just to drop in, and the idea there is to, have a broader community of folks to brainstorm your ideas around and with. And, I think for those particular dates, we'll also have a few other folks who are co-leading the Make for All initiative as part of those office hours, including some members of our advisory council who can also provide some interesting perspectives on some of the commitment ideas that you have, and some suggestions perhaps for partner organizations and supporting organizations. This last slide is really just additional resources that could be helpful as you're developing your commitment ideas. And then my contact information there. So for those of you that want to have a separate one-on-one conversation about your commitment, please feel free to email me at stephanie.santoso@citizenschools.org. So at this time, would love to kind of open it up to the broader group for any suggestions. I would love to, I would love to hear from any of you who have an interesting commitment idea and would be willing to share that out with our group here. We're actually, it's about 10 folks on the call, so it's a nice sized group to get some feedback and suggestions from. And then two, if there are any particular questions about any of the content that I covered just now, please feel free to let me know. Feel free to use the chat box if you feel more comfortable with that. And if you would like to actually talk, you can just use there's a hand raise icon that you can just click in the dashboard. You should see it pretty clearly, and Megan will be able to unmute you automatically. And Megan, just let me know if there are any particular questions or suggestions that came through during the conversation that I might have missed.
So sorry, I thought that I was talking to you. There are a couple of questions.
Great.
So the first one is from Joshua. The question is, what is the minimum size that a commitment can be from a commitment maker? Maybe it was stated, but I might have missed it.
That's a really good question. So I would say that there isn't a minimum size. So the idea with a commitment is that it just needs to be a commitment that is authentically having an impact related to the community that it's serving around maker-centered learning. So, you know, for an organization that is small and, you know, maybe serving, so I'll give an example, but, you know, there might be an organization that is a nonprofit organization that is smaller, and they're, you know, working closely with you know, two public schools, and they're currently working with you know, 50 students, and what they hope to do is to double or triple the number of students that they're working with. That could be a really big deal if you know, they're working in a smaller community. So I would say that you know, without trying to sound like I'm avoiding the question, we don't really have a minimum for the commitment. I would say though that, you know, the commitment does have to align with maker-centered learning. So it really does have to be focused on broadening access to those experiences. And I would also just reiterate that, if I didn't already, that when we say maker-centered learning, we don't only mean at the K through 12 level. What we are also recognizing as part of this initiative is that maker-centered learning is important throughout a person's life. So we would be looking for commitments that could speak to the K through 12 education experience, could carry on into the post-secondary experience. So that could include, you know, higher education like community college, and you know, a four-year institution, but also connects forward into you know, a person's career and their preparation into the workforce. So hopefully that helps to clarify.
Great. And I think that you kind of answered this next question just now, but I'll just reiterate it for it says, can a school in Chattanooga make a commitment to do blank and measure blank, but have it be a minor start to them getting started, i.e. as a catalyst for them being part of the community of commitment seekers?
Yes, and I would say that if this is I think we would welcome that, because part of this effort too is to help connect organizations, whether they're schools or libraries, who want to get started and want to be connected to the broader network of organizations that are already engaged in maker-centered learning. So yes, we would definitely be interested in a commitment like that.
Great. And then the last, or one of the last questions, oh no, there's a couple. The next one is there anyone else in Mexico? We're gathering for a free-for-all commitment planning meeting at Explora in Albuquerque on March 4th at 10:30 a.m. if anyone local would like to join.
Yes. So we, I know specifically, and Megan, you're probably also thinking of our friends in Socorro. But there are a number of other organizations that I have been speaking with that are in New Mexico. Was that question asked by Amy? I'm not sure if that was Amy.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Amy. We've been emailing back and forth. And Amy, offline, I'm more than happy to send you a short list of other organizations so that you all can get connected. And Amy, if you're interested in adding that as a part of the open brainstorming doc, if you wanted to kind of provide that update that you're actually also looking to connect with other organizations in New Mexico, that'd be great, because then other folks who I might not have even been talking to yet will be able to see that. But yes, thank you for the question.
Great. Amy said that would be great, so perfect. And then another question we have from Claire is, would expanding our program of professional development, i.e. the training of K through 12 teachers to implement maker learning in their schools, represent an acceptable commitment?
Yes, I think that, and the question was around expanding professional development.
It's talking about the training of training teachers, teacher training.
Yes.
Around maker learning. Yes.
Yes, that would definitely be a potential commitment. And I would say, Claire, thinking about how you specifically are going to scope the expansion of what you're doing. So, and I think Claire, you're at Kid Museum, so is part of the effort of what you're doing around deepening the work that you all are doing more broadly in the greater Maryland area? Are you looking to expand teacher training to work with teachers in other regions or other states? But thinking a little bit about that, but teacher professional development and teacher prep is a huge need within maker-centered learning. So I think that's a great start.
Great.
Perfect. Any other questions, ideas? Okay, well, I think that those were a great set of questions. Hopefully, some of the additional detail that I shared today was helpful, and I would love to follow up with anyone who would want to do a one-on-one and take a deeper dive on commitment ideas. And to the extent that you all are interested, again, I would encourage you to add your ideas to the open brainstorming document. And I will make sure to send out, for those of you who are on the webinar, a copy of the deck and some additional materials to kind of help you continue to brainstorm around the commitment process. I would also, since Amy offered up that she is hosting a meeting with other stakeholders in New Mexico around putting together a commitment for Make for All. That is something that we're seeing, is that different organizations are sort of using the Make for All initiative as a great opportunity to convene and bring together different community members to figure out ways that they can kind of collaborate around a commitment. So that might be something that you might want to consider as well. And in my follow-up email, I'll make sure to send out some materials that could be helpful in thinking about how to set up a meeting like that. And please feel free to reach out if you are interested in hosting something like that, and I'd be more than happy to help support in any way possible. Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and looking forward to continuing to workshop with you on your ideas.
Thanks, Steph.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.